insist on, it might cause us not to even be able to get a permit. But they didn't care. Yeah.
It's underneath your definition of contiguous. Has a survey been done of universities and colleges that would really benefit from this definition? Because for our standpoint, it's not really going to help us a whole heck of a lot. Because we have our engineering school in one location, our agriculture in one section, our chemistry in another section, and our central location at another. So in other words, they're not really contiguous with each other, so it doesn't really benefit us. And I just wonder how many other university colleges have a lot of separate locations where.
You just pointed out something that I should mention. One of the arguments for this approach on the guidance document, and again, I'm not going to suggest that it's going to resolve everybody's situation, but one of the ironies in this whole matter is that this guidance document is actually using just a more liberal interpretation of two key definitions, on-site, individual generator site, but it results in a more stringent control. If they divide everything up and use the 83 document from federal EPA, then you end up with multiple numbers, many of which would probably be conditionally exempt, in which case you have no requirements at all. And so that's what we said to them. And that's part of why I think that this thing will have great success, is because it really furthers and is congruent with the intent of the regulation, which is safe management. The strict interpretation in the 83 document results in dividing everything up, and you fall out of regulation. So, I don't know, we can talk in more detail, but one of the things that I would say is that it's very difficult and time-consuming to do a national survey. I don't think that anybody here has got the time to do a task like that. It would be monumental. And my contact with ACE, I asked him, I said, do you think that we need to do this in order to paint the picture and get a better understanding? And they really feel that they probably don't need that. I think that there will be certain key people that we need to pull together to possibly go to Washington and meet with some of the EPA people, but and certainly I'd be willing to talk to anybody that's interested in trying to be more actively involved in this. But any other comments or questions? Yeah.
If the properties are considered to be contiguous, do I understand you correctly to say that EPA then, not on the 83 document, but that EPA would say you'd only need one campus-wide number?
Right. He asked if your property is contiguous, is it correct in saying that you would only need one number? And yes, that is what this document from Region 4 and the position that we're trying to get from federal EPA would require. Any contiguous property. And again, they just have to touch at one point. Touch at one point. I don't care how many public roads you've got going through your campus. If your properties are touching at some point, even if you're divided by public roads, you only have one number. Except for, again, your off-site locations. But I would say that's where certainly I would be very serious about looking at what your generating levels are at those locations, because if you're conditionally exempt, you don't have to manifest, and many, I would say many off-site locations very easily could qualify as conditionally exempt. So personally, I think it is the answer that all of us that have gone through this process have been looking for. And for those of you that haven't, believe me, this is not something that you want to have to fight with if you encounter the kind of resistance that we have at our state level.
Okay, we're running a little late. Thank you, Sherry.
Okay.
Chuck has a BS in chemistry and microbiology from the University of Wisconsin La Crosse, and he's been at U of I for 1.5 years now in their hazardous waste management program. So, welcome, Chuck.
Well, thank you, Tom. This is my first Has Waste conference. I figured I'd jump right in and tell everybody how it's done. I just get a show of hands how many people actually have a chemical distribution program, like say to the tune 200 kilograms a year, 300. Okay, so somewhere in that area. We're a lot bigger place than maybe some of you are, so maybe some of the things won't apply. The question is chemical redistribution. Does it really work? That is kind of the $64,000 question when you begin looking at some of our waste disposal budgets, closer to the $664,000 question at the U of I this year. But I began to look at it more as a management type of a problem. Matter of fact, I gave myself a title, the Chemical Recycling Coordinator at our university. And it is a really interesting problem when you start to think about the different types of procedures people are doing in the laboratories, and it challenges me to go back and look at what I learned in chemistry, some of the procedures I learned, and find out just what it is exactly people are doing in these procedures, whether or not something that comes through my hands is good enough for what they do. I would just say for anyone who's starting something out, we basically jump-started this mostly through my impetus this last year. Throw away your preconceived ideas about what people will take, because that just kind of limits you until you do all the research around a campus and the various units. Doesn't mean throw away caution and all that sort of thing, because we don't need to be poisoning millions of dollars worth of research every year. But I would say yes, it works, and from people I've talked to the past few years, or past few months, a number of you have been doing it 5 or 10 years, rather successfully at a certain level. Let's give you a little background about what we do at the U of I as far as number of pickups and total volume and stuff. We're getting upwards of about 1,200 pickups a year. We go out 4 times a week to 4 different locations on campus. We have about 4,000 labs we could technically service. We get calls from about 1,000 labs over the course of a year. And we're picking up about 87,000 kilograms in fiscal, or 80,000 kilograms in fiscal year 90. That'll be a little higher this year. That's about 80 tons. 400 pounds a day, however you want to break that down. As far as our actual unit costs of disposal, and I'm just trying to define here really what can be accomplished through chemical redistribution, looking at the costs, amounts of material we could possibly hope to recycle. Fiscal year 90, we didn't landfill too much. Most of the material was going to incineration and treatment, about 65,000 kilograms. This recycling here is mostly waste oil. A few other things my boss threw in here to jump the figure a little bit, but really nothing in the way of laboratory chemicals too much. We didn't have a list going out too often, just sort of grab bag type material. And the things we throw to normal trash is about 11% of the material. KCl, auger, buffer solutions go down the drain. I might mention we all have different conditions. We're not Part B permitted. We do not even have a hookup to a sewer line. So this is kind of important for us. We're kind of limited in the number of things we can do. So the total number of kilograms we're looking at here is about 65,000 kilograms of chemicals, actually, that we might be able to consider for redistribution. And to look at some of the unit costs of disposal, how much money we might be saving with these various waste streams. We have the halogenated, bulk halogenated solvents. It's about 40,000 kilograms. That's about 10,000 gallons. We get about 4,000 gallons from our chemistry unit alone. That is bulked at a satellite facility, so there's not much we can do with that. About another 1,000 gallons from our operations and maintenance people and other affiliated units around campus. So we're getting about 5,000 gallons just from laboratory cleanouts around the area, waste, slightly contaminated types of streams that we might be able to do something with that we actually bulk up. I figured roughly about 20% of that, that's shooting a high ball figure, we might be able to do something with, and at a cost of disposal of $1 a kilogram. That's a number I came up with there. Other bulk waste incineration, we're talking here paint, toner, lab trash, various and sundry materials. Looking here mostly at paint that we might be able to recover. I figured, 100 gallons of paint or something like that. A few other other items, a couple $1,000. Bulk acids to treatment, that's basically just 55-gallon drum of your metals and acid type waste streams, nitric acid, sulfuric acid, hydrochloric acid. Looking mostly at the bottles of acid that come out of labs with nothing wrong with them. And I figured about 300 liters of that we might be able to get. I'm just assuming there that everything would be commingled as far as the cost of disposal. And the real units to look at here are just the lab-packed chemicals, which are costing about $20 a kilogram. I just made up a number of about 25% that we might be able to shoot for there. Similarly with our reactives, we receive a fair amount of reactive chemicals ourselves, about 300 kilograms in fiscal year 90. I figured, well, we could go about 25% on that too. So you could make anything you wanted here with different assumptions, but that's basically what I've tried to define with the realistic, the way we're doing things now and the way things are being disposed of here. Well, it's one thing to talk about all this. We've been trying this for the last year, and the better question is, where is the beef?
So,
Excuse me.
how did you determine unit costs?
Those are just from our internal reports my boss puts together based on what our vendor charges for us to ship materials off.
So the vendor gives you that kind of breakdown?
Well, we get the bills and my boss breaks it down. So I have a fairly good idea of what we hope to accomplish. Okay, this is kind of comparing apples and oranges. This is fiscal year 91. That's fiscal year 91 or 90 data. We had none of this pesticide material in here. This kind of breaks down the various streams I was talking about there. We have a xylene stream, which is going over to our Oneill facility, about 3 barrels a year. We had a sort of a crisis situation there. This year we have some fiend, some pyromaniac who's running around the U of I burning down all of the ornamental horticultural storage sheds, except he doesn't do a very good job. He doesn't burn up all the hazardous materials, just enough to destroy the shed, so we have a problem there. So I had to call in the USDA, the agronomy section, our grounds people, and the golf course, and everybody else I could think of around campus, and everybody I couldn't think of to try to get rid of that material, and we got rid of a fair amount of it. The rest was lab packed, and I figured based on lab packing that's how much we saved. Now, that's actually a low ball figure. Pesticides, I don't know if many campuses have much to do with that, but some of these fungicides and pesticides can run $20, $30, $40, even $80 a pound, some of this material. Laboratory chemicals, this is really what I'm interested in here as far as routine types of redistribution. 709 kilograms, 630 containers. And you might ask, well, where did that number come from? Well, that's basically from our central stores purchase price list. That includes the discounts. If I didn't have something, I made up something close to what I thought it would be. And I might just say, you know, if I wanted to engage some different assumptions here and do a little sophistry, I could come up with about any number I wanted. You start putting in high prices for purchase costs and HPLC grade and all that sort of thing. But I'm trying to sell the program to the facility managers, to the heads of departments, things like that, so I want to use a conservative figure. 2,000 kilograms all told, say a purchase cost about 12,000, save disposal cost about 15,000. So that's the first year. It's really just a baby program. I've talked to other people. They seem to say they're doing a couple thousand or 1,000. I haven't seen a lot of good records. But that was this year. As far as how we publicize things in our record keeping, we are getting material at our waste storage facility for the most part, choosing the material ourselves and entering it in a D-based program. We have a little report form that kicks this out. I separate into the various hazard classes so people can kind of get it. This is actually 10 pages long, and we reduce it and circulate it every couple of months to the various people. And probably the most important information people want to know is whether or not it's open. As far as quantity and so forth, it's not real critical. But you might look at some of these things, you might think nobody would ever take some of this sort of thing, but I just had somebody take the fuming nitric acid the other day, and a number of other things here. So I basically throw in, go ahead.
Will you be listed? Anybody?
Sure, sure, I can give you my business card or something. I didn't know if
No,
this,
I mean, anybody.
oh,
That's
I don't know. Yeah,
People come by and they say they use nitric acid for strictly on the phone or something.
no, it's on it's on campus. I don't know.
would come by to the exact.
And take it off campus. That's not strictly legal. Well, I'll just shut my mouth. No.
I just wondered if you had any kind of checkout procedure, if you give someone a chemical, if they check it out. You know, if you say, I
The way
we don't.
the way it's been working right now, we have everything at our storage facility, and one of us personally delivers it back. So it's not like it's sitting at some satellite. We do have a few situations like that, but for the most part, it's back at our storage facility. They call us on the phone after they've seen the list, and we just bring it to them. As far as worrying about what they do with it after that, we're assuming they use it for on-campus purposes.
Do they sign that they received it?
No. I know some people go to those lengths, and that's probably not a bad idea. We've just been generating. I run around to the various departments, to the secretaries, and get some of these mailing lists that just fit nicely on Avery labels, so we can just copy those right off, zip them on these lists, and send them out in the mail. Sometimes I've also just sent the list directly to department secretaries or some of our graduate safety experts in the chemistry department, various little groups I have. We're also developing a mailing list off of our campus-wide survey, waste minimization survey. So I've got 4 or 5 different means. I'm kind of picking out the best one at this point. I try to avoid sending out 300 at once, because then you get swamped with 30 requests for one item, and that's kind of a mess. And this also helps to facilitate record keeping for what they actually took, as I'll point out later. I've tried to emphasize in my memos that I send out with the lists, have people give me standing orders of what they would like to receive. This is one example of a person in veterinary medicine requested some acetonitrile. Turns out we had a clean out over in one of our microbiology labs, had about 5 gallons of reagent grade acetonitrile. Since I had this letter, I knew it in advance, took that material right over to her, and she was very happy. Something a little more high-tech, rather than just sending it out when we get around to it every couple of months, is trying to make things available so that the researchers themselves can access our inventory. And one way to do that is through email. I've tried that. Turns out most of the campus doesn't really use email, as was evident by the addresses they sent me back. I looked them up in the computer phone book, and they were all the wrong addresses. So that's a bit of a problem. I may pursue that a little bit more. This is something, I don't know if any of you use Unix or are familiar with it, but it's a very slick little procedure on our campus. We're pretty much hardwired throughout campus, and this is a file transfer protocol. It takes doing some of this, putting together a readable procedure for somebody to try to get them to use it, because again, most of them don't even use Unix. They're doing their research. They're not particularly interested in this sort of thing. But it's really, I've gone and tried this at various locations around the campus. It works just slick. All you do is, I give them the address to our Unix system, our Unix computer, our address. They just have a few passwords here they have to put in, know the address, the file name. In a second, they have a full copy of the file, and that way they could tell us whether or not they wanted something on their terms and on their time schedule, rather than waiting for our list. And something I haven't pushed a whole lot yet, just because we're not that well internally organized yet as far as updating our database and keeping everything slick. But that's something that should work fairly well, I would think, if some people really get, the researchers really get using it readily. As far as quality control on the jars, we send out every jar with a label, where we got it from, the date, where it's going to, and the date, in case somebody's just pack ratting this material and 2 years later it shows up. Would be good information to have, to keep a little balance. The amounts, whether or not it's open, and particularly with the solvents and the acids, I put a little use at your own risk, use at discretion type of disclaimer here, because those are a little more difficult to tell whether or not they're really good. The dry chemicals, I don't have much problem with. If they have a label on them. Okay, I'd like to switch over to some slides, if I could get somebody to flick on the slide machine there. I'm looking for the clicker here.
I think it's on the podium.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. I'm going to use it in a second. Well, where do you begin? We were basically starting from scratch. There we go. Oops. Stop. Everything on my punchlines. Okay. Think that'll work? Okay, well, where do you start? If you're just jump starting this sort of program, and I wasn't that familiar with what a lot of people on campus were doing, we have these monthly pickups that we do at our chemistry and biology buildings. So I just thought I'd take a few items out there and see if people would grab them. Sidewalk sale. That kind of has all the credibility of a sideshow barker selling snake oil, but I was having fun. And what would it cost some of the researchers coming out of the building? Here we have one researcher looking at this bottle of hexane, has our label on it. He's not quite convinced what you do for a quality control program. There you give a little thumbs up, and that's reassuring. But no, really, I'm trying to research and talk to everybody that calls as much as I can. Well, what are you doing? What are you using this for? Just so, I've spent a fair amount of time in the lab myself, so I'm fairly comfortable with a lot of the chemistry, microbiology, but art, paint, O&M, some of these types of units, it's a little more difficult. And it's important to get the right mixture of chemicals. Sometimes things don't turn out all right. And this really has nothing to do with the redistribution, but I couldn't resist. If you're ever wondering what sulfuric acid, fresh sulfuric chromic acid solution, an acetone looks like, a big fireball shoots out of the container and melts all the thermoplastic material in the area. This is our waste storage facility, the dynamics testing laboratory. That's where all our material goes that we collect from campus. And I should define some terms at this point. I try to redistribute within some of these buildings without ever taking it out there, and I call that in-house redistribution. When we take it back out here and redistribute it, I call that out-house redistribution. That distinction may be helpful. Well, here are some of the excess chemicals. Which one look good to you? That's the choice. This isn't the best way to do it, but that's kind of the way it's going right now. I'm trying everything basically. These are solvents. We try to keep, basically we're storing everything just like we would normal storage, just putting it into a database and publishing the list. solvents, the jars break, it's cumbersome, it doesn't really save a lot of money, but I'm doing it mostly for the convenience aspect for the researchers at this point and trying to drum up business. More apropos are the dry chemicals, the oxidizers, the metal salts that we have here. I would say in total we probably have 700 or 800 kilograms at one time in the list in inventory. I'd like to get a little bit more than that, especially if we could get some sites around campus. Some specific examples about what people are taking, and this is what has kind of opened my eyes. This is the typical chemistry laboratory, and they've been our best takers, one lab in particular, and it's not like every lab is just going ape over this program, but if you throw enough spaghetti up the wall, a little bit will stick, and one lab in particular is called every time I put out the list and ordered all these items, and particularly the reactives, the oxidizers, and that sort of thing. They're taking sodium, sodium hydride, those types of things they're doing. When they buy bulk solvents, a lot of times they'll try to dry those out, throw in a little sodium or something like that to take out the water. Phosphorus pentoxide, which is just anhydrous phosphoric acid, that's put in vacuum lines for vacuum distillations, that sort of thing. Doesn't need to be anything fancy, just oxidizers in general. And that's been an eye-opening experience. Also things like thionyl chloride, they'll take that and purify it, redistill it. All of those things cost $50 a kilogram to get rid of, so sort of found something here that iodine for iodine chambers, all sorts of qualitative uses that don't need great chemicals. Alcohols for KOH baths, things like that. This is our veterinary medicine complex. Now these people are very broke, so they've responded to this program fairly well. Multiple responses from a number of laboratories. This is a multi-channel analyzer, just to point out one example of something that doesn't need real great quality cocktail. We also have people who make their own cocktail using toluene, phenyloxazole, PPO, those sorts of things. Again, very expensive chemicals, but they were real happy to get things like acrylamide, biotech grade acrylamide, $90 a kilogram, Trisma buffers, and they also just take citric acid, a lot of things like that very routinely. So I've been pleased with their response. This is our histology lab, which generates slightly contaminated xylene and ethanol. Right now the ethanol is basically going down the drain. The xylene and the xylene substitutes here we collect and take over to our O&M facility. And what they are doing is just rinsing out their street sweeper with the excess xylene from histology lab. You understand what we're doing there? We get about 10 gallons a week from the histology lab of xylene. We bulk that up in a 55-gallon drum in our facility and then take it over to the O&M area. In a 55-gallon drum, they just rinse out this machine, clean it up, and then send it back to us when it's dirty. We ship it off as waste at that point. So we do fairly well with that stream.
What is it, to get the tar and stuff out of there?
I don't know.
Just
I've never.
everything?
I would get. I'm not sure.
Yeah, it's a street painter.
Street painter. Okay.
And so they're cleaning up the parks.
Okay, taking the paint off there. But that's one that works out really well. And there are other slightly contaminated things like from sock slat extractions, just part per billion type contaminations in methylene chloride. People in entomology labs who are using preservatives, ethanol solutions, things of that nature. That's why I kind of threw in that big figure as far as solvents that we might recover. There are some qualitative uses of cleaning and that sort of thing. This is the work of the pyromaniac here. This used to be a big $300,000 shed. This is where all the pesticides are at, strewn all over this area to the right on the cement slab. And I had a real good picture of that originally. Unfortunately, I had no film in the camera. Small problem, but
Was he really just burning down places where pesticides were stored?
well, he's after the people in ornamental horticulture. He's got a problem of some sort. I'm not sure what it is, but yeah, they think he may still be working in operations and maintenance or something. But So we called in the greenhouse people. The golf course took a lot. USDA, we have a very extensive, well, it's large, a whole school of agriculture, so not something we do a lot routinely, but it shows a crisis situation where really that saved us a lot more money than everything else I did the rest of the year, having this sort of program going. That'll help more in the future. And this here, well, you might say, well, that's just a pile of dirt. That's right. By the way, there's another shed the Pyromaniac got. That's a new one right behind there. But we don't have a sewer line hookup, but we get a lot of sodium nitrite, things of that order. That's basically fertilizer. And our grounds people put fertilizer on there every once in a while, and so I figured, well, let's put a little more fertilizer on there. And the weeds enjoy that very nice. They're very happy. Saves about $1,000 a year or two. Some other areas I'm not that familiar with, I've had to learn some things about, are art people. They're very broke as well, and they appreciate paint, that sort of material. This is actually a bad example. The day I went over to talk to the art people about the material we might be able to bring them, they said, well, we'll take some eggshell white, we'll take this kind of brown. The very same day, we got a bunch of stuff from the housing people, the operations and maintenance. And I thought, well, that'd be great, except it was the middle of January. They set it out, and it froze. And our paint experts in the section says, don't take that over there. So that was kind of disappointing, but I'll be ready next time. And also, a lot of people in the art department use etching solutions, oxidizers, potassium chlorate, acid, again, qualitative uses that could fit in nicely. I'll tell one story, one little problem I had with a Russian art teacher. He wanted some, this is before I knew much about etching or anything like that, he wanted some potassium chloride. I said, okay, we'll bring you some KCl. Except he uses potassium chlorate. So well, he had some stuff for his plants anyway. That's just some singing material that they throw the paint on. They're not too fussy with some of this backing that they use on their scenery in the scene shop. This is a local community college, Parkland College, which is in our city. I've talked to these people about possibly, you know, they don't have any money either. They might as well take a lot of the stuff we have. They're not doing research. But they've kind of been dumped on in the past by people giving them excess chemicals, and they weren't really excited about it. But I think if you actually had a standing order and list, and I tried to get a hold of some of their stock people, that would be something that would work as well. I know some people here are doing that. This is our Fire Safety Institute. Now, normally, on a good day, there's a big black billowing cloud coming out of that stack there. These are the guys that played with matches when they were young. And so we were talking about, Mr. Gomez was talking about on-site explosion and treatment yesterday. Well, this is a good place to take sodium metal, sodium chloride, sodium peroxide, and they will get rid of it for you in a hurry as a matter of routine destruction, because they throw in pallets, they throw in magnesium shavings, they throw in everything and then run and laugh, I guess, whatever they do. But that was an interesting thing I hadn't thought of, but it, again, takes some very reactive chemicals off our hands. They're just about a mile away from our facility. Well, this is kind of getting more into what I would like to be doing. This is a hall locker in our microbiology building, and this is just kind of a product of spreading word, getting the word out. One professor who had called in a routine waste pickup had mentioned this locker that he had, and he had inherited about 200 jars of just excess chemicals, wanted to get rid of them, but he was in no hurry. So what we did is we took and made the inventory of what's in here, circulated it throughout the building, and now we're just having people go to this locker and take this material out of there themselves, rather than us trying to take it back to the facility and monkey around with it there. I think I have another picture here. Oh, I guess not. But that's the sort of thing I'd like to be doing more of. This is a let's make a deal question. What's behind door number 1 here? This is a door right next to the main desk of our organic stockroom, and right behind here is a 5 level shelf that they actually had been using for chemical redistribution. Except nobody was really doing anything with it, and so they called us up a while ago and had us haul all out of there before I was around. I've been around about a year and a half. And I went back here and trying to give these guys the business, saying, well, we could use some space in here within the building. And the stockroom manager said in his inimitable fashion, man, we hauled that stuff out of here. It was a mess. Now you want to bring it back in here? No way. But I have a plan to get around that sort of thing. That may not look like much. That used to be an area for a phone booth, and people were looking at me when I was taking a picture of this. You must really not have much to do today. But that looks to me like a good place to put a redistribution locker. So, sort of things I'm thinking of and looking at around. Well, that's true. That's true. That thought has come up before. Could you turn that off? I just have a couple more overheads I'd like to look at. So, basically the way I've looked at it, trying to build some credibility, trying to get some service by doing things from our facility, I'd like to be able to say, now that we've got a little bit of data, go to these facility managers and these stockroom people, because they're not real enthusiastic. They're not paying any disposal bills. They don't even know we exist, a lot of the people on campus. But get these purchasing records from the central stores, and I'm not trying to make you read that, but this is from our consolidated storeroom, one of our storerooms in chemistry. And just go line by line and say, no, look, you're spending all this money, you have all these researchers spending, say, well, they get 15 jars of potassium nitrate or 20 jars of potassium chromate, stuff that doesn't go bad, and we're shipping off 15 pounds of it a year. This is crazy. And so give us some room. Except they might object and say, well, that's true, spending all this money isn't real intelligent, but will anybody take it? And of course, now I have the trump card, our database of people who've taken various things, and this is just one page of it, or we can do a little manipulation and say, well, here, this is what some people in chemistry have been taking from us. They're just demanding this material, and so we need to do something. The sooner the better. So that's kind of the approach I'm looking to take in the future, the next couple weeks, months, as I go back. I've called a few other universities and just tried to get a feel for what they're doing. I don't know, is there anybody here from MIT? I don't know if anybody saw the safety note that they've published. Oops, there's some of the material that they've published, but they have actually, I've got their note here, I didn't make an overhead of it. I had it somewhere. They actually had the whole chemistry unit, professors who got real motivated, and they had a sort of a waste exchange holiday, and got their stockroom to take the excess chemicals for like a 2-year period. And I noticed in their note that they had turned over about 430 containers in about 6 months to about 55 different people. So it does work if somebody takes the time to go ahead and do it and has the motivation for it. And I guess in my little outline there I sent a copy of the regional waste exchanges. It's good to be aware of those. I don't know. I just recently made aware of them myself. I don't know if anybody has ever used those things. The problem is there's just not enough quantity for one individual college to be, they want to spend $250 to characterize each waste stream. And for 50 pounds of material that you might have, that really kind of negates any cost benefit. So I'll conclude there. If you have some questions or something shocked you that I said there that you might want to talk about, or some suggestions I'd like to get your ideas to. Yeah.
How long do you hold them until you decide they're waste, or do you ever decide that they're waste?
That's kind of been a question up in there. The way I've been doing it, It's basically if nobody wants it or I find something better. I've got those stickers so I know when it came in. I'm thinking basically a year. If we get something a little better, I'll replace that, throw that out with the contractor.
You ever thought about the idea of having to give people MSDS when you give them the chemical?
Yeah, that's come up, but I assume most of these people are using these chemicals routinely. It's not.
Kind of an incentive you have to get people to contribute to your storeroom.
What do you mean our storeroom?
Well, to contribute chemicals to your
That's one thing I forget to mention. There really is none. What I'd like to see happen, if we can get redistribution within the various buildings, get people to call us 6 months ahead of time, like that professor who had that locker sitting there with all that excess chemicals, get him to call us ahead of time so we can have a list, a number of different databases from different buildings on campus, and so we could communicate that to other people within the building. That's what I'm thinking in terms of contributing to the program. They're already dumping all kinds of redistributable chemicals on us, but it's just a matter of having too much volume right now to really do as much as I'd like to do. Did that answer your question? Or?
I thought the whole incentive issue is one that's probably key to operating this. One of the things we thought about is perhaps putting a surcharge on new materials, and they wouldn't pay a surcharge and they grew out of the chemical store.
Oh, well, everything we give them is free, obviously. That's something we're getting real big operations. I've still got to work a lot of that out with our stockroom people and stuff. So. Yeah.
What database do you use?
eBay's 4.
And how often do you update and re-mail or reprint or republish your redistribution?
Whenever I feel like it right now. Because it's a real problem. I mean, something comes in, something comes out, and it's rather confusing. About every 6 weeks is basically what I'm doing. And it's not, I'm only going like 10, 15, 20 people at a time right now.
As long as, you said 700 to 800 kilograms on the list at one time?
It might be overstating it a little bit, but it should be, I think there's like 400 records. That's ballpark, yeah. It's basically a good share of our excess, or our chemical inventory is on. Well, maybe I'm overstating it.
There would be more than one bottle.
Oh yeah, more than one bottle. See, I've got multiple bottles
Right, but if you, okay.
on one line. I
On
might
one
have
line.
8 of, and we reduce that to like 5.
Aren't you on program for printing that list?
Yeah, it's just a little report form in DBase. It's
Does it run right from your inventory?
well, it's a, I don't know. I actually didn't do the programming, so, but it's fairly straightforward. It's just a report form in DBase.
I have database 3 plus, and I don't know what 4 will do, but the idea of getting 8 containers on something in database 3 plus, if you've got 8 containers and they total a certain way, but they're not all the same, you got to print them all out 8 times. There's no way, unless you write a program to do it, you can't just get the report to combine 8 containers on one line of the report. I think that's more than one.
Okay. Yes.
Do you get much market for the already open bottles?
More than I thought. Like I was saying, chemistry will take open bottles of thionyl chloride, open bottles of solvent, tetracarbon tet. Depends on the person, but more than I thought. So I've basically thrown out my ideas and put it on the list. Just try to communicate with them when they take it, and have a good label on there so they know what they're doing. I know what they're getting.
Well, I'm under the impression it's lunchtime. Schedule. Our next presenter is Paul Millette, Clean Harbors. His presentation is going to be available resources to better manage your time as a manager. Paul has a Bachelor's of Science degree in Marine Engineering from Massachusetts Marine Academy, and prior to being an account manager with Clean Harbors, he was a lab pack field chemist for Clean Harbors for a couple of years. So let's welcome Paul and start off with the afternoon.
Good afternoon, everyone. Hope I can keep you awake here after that big lunch. What I want to talk to you about today is just some resources that are available to you to maybe aid you a little bit, help you out, let you know that you don't have to be a Superman or Superwoman, do it all on your own. There are a lot of people out there that can help you. And with that, I guess I'll get going. Today's tough and constantly changing environmental laws make being a hazardous waste manager an extremely complex job. California lists, soft hammers, hard hammers, thirds, TCLPs, chemical hygiene plans, new DOT shipping rigs, annual and semi-annual reporting. All these are of equal importance in the eyes of the authority. It should be adhered to by the letter of the law. But how does a hazardous waste manager keep up with all these laws and their changes? How do we know which to do first? Who's more important, EPA, DOT, state authorities, OSHA? How can we be as effective as possible in our jobs, making things safe, legal, and environmentally sound? After all, we all wear a number of different hats within our jobs. We have to properly manage how much time we spend on each portion of our jobs. There are a number of tools and resources available to you as managers to assist you with your complex job, and that's what we'll hopefully discuss today. Fix that a little, John? The first available resource I'd like to talk about is the use of a consultant, and I know there are a few in the room here today. Consultants are an exceptional resource for you to use. Consultants are used quite frequently in the college and university waste management community. Small schools might use a consultant to run their entire hazardous waste program from A to Z. Larger schools might hire consultants to do specialized projects or to oversee portions of their programs. So no matter what size your program is, you should consider the use of a consultant to assist you with your time management. It is safe to assume that there is a consultant available to you to help in whatever aspect of your job you need. A consultant can review your entire program to check for problems that might have been overlooked by someone in your staff. They can inform you of problems or potential problems in your system and advise you remedies for the problems. It's always nice to have a pair of eyes from the outside look at what you're doing. After all, any state agency or agency that inspects you might be just as unfamiliar and confused by your system as a consultant might be. Because the laws and regulations are changing with such frequency, it's a good idea to have a walkthrough with a consultant as frequently as possible. It might be necessary to bring in a consultant to assist in specific parts of your program. Recently, the chemical hygiene plan went into effect. And believe it or not, and actually talking to a lot of people out there today and yesterday, there are a good number of institutions that don't have one in place yet. And consultants can analyze your program and write up a chemical hygiene plan specifically for your site, thus reducing a lot of your burden. A consultant can easily help with the building and storage areas. Most are aware of all state, federal, OSHA, NFPA, and local laws with regards to storage areas. And they can even make all the proper arrangements to get your permitting done for those storage facilities. If there's a specific part of your program that needs adjusting or rewriting, a consultant can easily help with that as well. They can help with proper reporting procedures and all other aspects of your program. All these ideas will enable you to manage your time much more effectively. Consultants are very easy to find. We work within a very tight and close-knit industry. Therefore, it is very easy to find consultants via word of mouth. If this is not possible, then the yellow pages are always a viable option for locating a consultant. With today's budget constraints, it's becoming more and more difficult to get the proper funds to pay for this type of service. Consultants bill in a number of different ways. They can be retained based on annual fees, paid by the number of visits, paid by the project they are working on, or by the hour. Remember, the cost of one fine for a particular violation might well exceed the cost you might have paid for a consultant to remedy the problem before it was a violation. In this industry, it sure seems that it's a question of pay now or pay later. Another great resource available to you is the use of an environmental services company. There are a number of different ways that they can do this. When shopping for an environmental services company, it's important to keep a few things in mind. The track record of the company is extremely important. In this industry, you only want to do business with reputable organizations. It's quite easy to find out information about these companies. You should request all possible records from your potential environmental services company. Get all of their insurance certificates, transporters permits, facility permits, employee training requirements, list of any possible transportation or facility violations, financial information about the company, and a list of disposal sites used by the company. It's also recommended that you audit the company's facilities. It's extremely important to see how your waste will be processed and handled. On the same note, you should also ask about the environmental services company policies for auditing any facilities that they might ship your waste to, should they not be able to handle it in-house. Ask the company for a list of references. Once again, we work in a very small and tight-knit organization and industry. Word of mouth and reputation are very important, and it's easy to find out a lot of information from your peers. Find out exactly how your waste will be handled. Does the company have a wide range of disposal options? Will they incinerate, fuel blend, treat, recycle, landfill? And what other state-of-the-art disposal options do they have? Find out whether the company is willing to comply with any specialized disposal restrictions or guidelines that you may have. Make sure to see what types of material they can handle. Can they handle all of your normal waste streams? The organics, inorganics, poisons, oxidizers, organic peroxides, etc. And what capabilities does this company have to handle your specialized waste stream? Can they handle all of your reactives, your unknowns, your metal powders, mercury, mercuric compounds, cylinders, dioxins, and dioxin-forming compounds, as well as any other specialized waste streams and material that you may have? Once you've chosen your environmental services company, let them go to work for you. They can greatly reduce the amount of time that you have to spend on particular parts of your job. Thus you are able to manage your time much more effectively. The answer to a great many questions are just one phone call away. In addition to your environmental services company doing all of your waste disposal, there are a whole lot more that they can do for you. Let the company do all of your laboratory pickups. Let them do your on-site pour-offs and bulking. You'll not have to worry about whether or not all your material will be taken away, or you're going to have to make additional phone calls to get rid of certain things. Your environmental services company can be your emergency response team. They'll do all of your manifesting, LDRs, labeling, and any other paperwork that might be required. They can do all of the sampling, profiling, analytical work, including TCLP testing. They'll be able to help engineer storage rooms, treatment systems, remediation projects, or any other specialized projects that you might have. Environmental services companies can also help with closure plans, 21E site assessments. Let them handle all of your drum tracking, and with the drum tracking reports, they can help you with your reporting procedures. They can do tank removal installations, testing, power plant cleanouts, PCB transformer and ballast jobs, as well as maybe even some medical waste disposal. Those are just a few ideas about using your environmental services company to their full potential. All these projects can be handled with just one phone call. This will enable you to better manage your time. Remember, let your environmental services company work for you. You can find environmental services companies in a few ways. Word of mouth is one way. You can also find them from consultants, state, local, and federal agencies, as well as the Yellow Pages and trade journals. So far, we've discussed how other people can help us manage our jobs. Now let's talk about the use of computers and machines. There are a great deal of computer programs available to us out there. These programs can really help us manage our jobs with a lot more ease. Programs that are available enable you to better manage your paperwork with regards to drum tracking, quarterly and annual reporting, manifesting, MSD filing, and a lot of other things as well. A computer can help with inventory control as well. Because all the systems can be quite complex, I've decided to just choose one of them to talk about today. The system I've chosen is relatively new and actually quite simple, and the system is the use of barcoding. I met with a barcoding company prior to this speech, And I'm not an expert on barcoding at all, but I explained basically where all you folks would be out there and what you'd be looking for a barcoding system to do. And he listened for about a half hour, and then he came back to me with what I'm going to tell you about now. And it's relatively simple, but as I'm going through, if I start to lose you, if you could just holler up and we'll possibly try to go back and find where we got lost. What this barcode and computer system that I'm going to talk about enables you to do is track all the chemicals present at your facility from the time the chemicals enter the facility as stock chemicals until they are eventually taken away as hazardous waste. The system is quite similar to the barcode system that you might find in a supermarket. The system will let you have a complete listing of all chemicals on your site at all time. And having this information will enable you to order material in a more controlled manner, if that is indeed what you do. Have all the necessary information should an emergency occur, including MSDSs and safety information. Do your reporting with a lot more ease and a number of other applications as well. For example purposes today, I've chosen acetone as the chemical we'll be tracking through the facility. The first situation I'll go through is when the material first arrives as a virgin product. Upon receipt of the acetone by the receiving department or chemical stockroom supervisor, a barcode label similar to this would be affixed to the bottle. Each barcode label is numbered in chronological order. This one we have up here is just, we do all of our drum tracking at Clean Harbors with a barcode system. So every single drum gets its own chronological number when it comes in. After the label is affixed, it is then scanned by the use of a handheld scanner and handheld computer. And you can see them. This is the little scanning device, and then the handheld computer. And I guess those didn't come out too well, but I think most of you have seen those types of units before. Yes?
The numbers you had earlier on, they correspond to that?
What's that?
The numbers you had earlier on, barcode?
No,
They correspond to anything?
that would be the chronological number. The first chemical that you ever put a barcode would be number 1, and then they just keep going up and up and up.
Is there any way you could do it so in that the information on the barcode could have what chemical it was?
Oh yeah, that's exactly what this whole system will do for you. I think. Well, let me go on a little bit, and then you can ask the question if it's not answered correctly. The size, once you scan, you affix a label to the container, then you scan the label. At that point in time, you enter into the handheld unit the size of the container. In this case, we'll use 5 gallons as an example. Once you do this, you can also set it up so the computer will prompt you to input a waste code status. And because this is a virgin chemical, and it's not a waste, and it's going to be in your stock room, there's a few ways you can do this. You can either scan off of a scanning sheet to tell the computer that it's a virgin product, it should not have a waste code, or you might want to, it can prompt right up on the handheld computer waste code status, and you just plug in an N for no, hit enter, and now it's in that handheld computer that 5-gallon drum of acetone is in your plant or in your stock room as virgin unused product. Nothing to do with waste at this point in time, but you still have an inventory of it in a computer program. Once that's all done, any information of the receiving load will be downloaded into your main computer program. Very simple to do. You just plug that computer through some lines into your other computer program. Yes?
Can I check something? If you had 3 drums of acetone that came in, would they all have different barcodes on them?
The system can be designed however you want it. You could do it, yeah, or you could have all acetone with one type of barcode on it.
Because you talked about chronological, which would mean that acetone that came in August would have a different number than acetone that came in September.
Exactly.
I think it would be easier to keep track of all acetone together.
There's numerous applications that you can do, and that's one of the things that this gentleman that I sat down with stressed to me is that the program can be designed however you want it to be designed. In this case, I just chose to take each and every bottle or container that came in to give it its own number. It will still show up in the computer program when you access it. all the acetones will show up together. They'll have their drum or container number next to them, and if you want to plug in the date received so you'll know how old it is, or you can do it all, every acetone that comes in will have the same type of barcode on it. So there's a few different ways you can do it. As well as receiving all the chemicals when they come in, you would also originally have to go back in your stock room and affix barcode labels to every single chemical that's in there. And I know Ed and a few other people here might say that, well, that's a heck of a job to do. And it is, but it's a one-time thing, hopefully, that you'll have to do. There's another way to enter in the waste code off of your, say you picked it up from a laboratory and now you decided that this is going to be a waste, or you've taken it right from the stock room after it was sitting in there for 5 years, they don't want it anymore, now it's a waste. What you do now is you can either manually type in the waste code number, but we're all not wizards here and we don't know all the waste numbers and we'd have to look them up. So what we can do is the use of a scanning sheet that is set up in a form of a loose leaf binder. And you would basically just, in alphabetical order here, you would look up acetone. This would be its original state with no waste code at all. And then just look up whatever the particular waste code would be. If it's a virgin product that you want to get rid of, you use that one. If it's a spent solvent, you would use that. If it's something with acetone in it and it would show characteristic, if it's a mix of a few different things, then it would show that characteristic. And you would just simply scan the acetone 5-gallon pail, come into here and scan that sheet, and it would automatically enter in whatever waste code that would be. This can also be done for any state-regulated waste, any characteristic waste, or anything of that sort, so that any time you would have a chemical that was non-hazardous, you would just sweep across the non-hazardous line, and it would show up in Massachusetts as NA99 or whatever you wanted to distinguish that particular chemical as. So that's what the scanning sheet would do. On the same note of the fact that when you pick up all the chemicals, you would need to scan their particular numbers and scan their barcode labels, put them into your waste storage facility. If you have a waste storage facility, you would also have to affix all the waste that's present in the waste storage facility with the same barcode, and you'd have to go through one time to get everything up to date, so to speak, and put barcodes on everything. Also, you would enter at that point in time all of their waste codes and waste characteristics. What I'll do now is I want to go through a scenario with you, is when say a professor decides that he or she needs 3 gallons of acetone. What happens? Basically what happens is they go to the stock room, ask the stock room supervisor, or get themselves, put into a new container, a 3-gallon container, some acetone, and then they would affix a barcode label to that as well. They would scan the first sheet, the first of the main 5-gallon can of acetone, and then plug in that now there are only 2 gallons left, and put a new barcode label on the second container of acetone and prompt in that there are now 3 gallons. So now you know where that went. In addition to having the scanning sheets for waste codes, you can also tell exactly where everything is going to go to. You can have the handheld computer prompt you to ask, when this 3-gallon container of acetone, you strike it in, read the barcode label, plug in those 3 gallons, ask you your waste status. At this point in time, it's not a waste, so you type in no, or scan off the scanning sheet the word no. You could also tell exactly what building, what laboratory, where it went. Whatever you want in this program, you can design it into, just by the use of a scanning sheet, as I've shown right here. By the same token, when you pick the waste up, you can also do the same thing. You pick up the material, wipe across the barcode, find out what it is, plug in the proper amount, and then also you can hit the scanning sheet for this proper waste code. Another thing that this enables you to do is when you have a hazardous waste pickup of all your material, you could give the environmental services company or whoever does your pickups a handheld scanner. They can scan every bottle as they put it into the drum, every drum as they put it onto the truck, if you have bulking materials. And then that gives you a total count of all your waste codes by weight that you've sent out for every shipment. So that could greatly help in your reporting, your semi-annual and annual and quarterly reporting that you might have. Another thing that you can do is when this is used for bulking procedures, every container that you would bulk up into a 55-gallon drum or whatever you're bulking up into would be scanned. Then a barcode label would be affixed to the new drum. That would be scanned, and then simply a button on the handheld unit, whatever it's designed, whatever the consultant, whoever designs the system, just plug in a number. All that information about all the bottles that are into this drum now are now affixed to that drum. So anytime you scan that barcode or anytime you access manually in the computer the drum number similar to that we saw on the screen, it would show up that all these materials are in your drum. As I said, I'm not an expert on the system, but it's actually relatively simple. And I know there are a lot of crazy situations that are involved with laboratories, and I know that you're probably all thinking of about 100 of them right now. So if you want to ask me a couple questions, specific problems that might occur.
What happens in a lab where they take the stuff and just put two things together?
Put it into a million different containers? There's a few different ways you can track that through, depending on how much control you have at your facility and how much money you have and how many scanning systems you have. One way is to give the laboratory a scanning gun or a handheld computer and just have them scan as they put this and this together. That goes into that one. Another one is they could just let you know, writing stuff out, what's in every single drum and every single little bottle and container. And then when you come to do the waste pickups, it's labeled anyhow for you. They have labeled, usually they label what's in the containers. And you would basically, it would almost be like receiving a new chemical. You would have to enter the information at that point in time. Yes? That was next what I was going to get into. The consultant that I talked with, the barcoding company, said that a system like this, depending on how sophisticated you want to get, can run anywhere from about $3,000 to $5,000, which is really not too bad. And that what you get there is the hardware, the scanners, a couple handheld scanners, computers, the original barcode labels, and the scanning sheets. Depending on how many scanning sheets you're going to have, that might go up as well. Then they would come in, sit down, work it into your computer system that you already have. Possibilities of additional costs at later dates are really any more hardware that you might need if things grow. Definitely you would probably need more labels, and then any systems upgrades that you would need. So he assured me that it was more towards the $3,000, but anywhere between $3,000 and $5,000. Yes?
This doesn't really help inventory
As far as
keeping track of, somebody ordered 55-gallon, 55-gallon drum of acetone, and you received 30 gallons of waste. What happened to the other 25?
Mm-hmm.
Is there an interconnection that you can make between barcoding and actually assessing where this stuff goes, and maybe?
Theoretically, yes, but in the world that we all live in, it's not going to happen too easily. There's going to be a lot of detective work
Like
involved.
if somebody has a bottle,
Mm-hmm.
and you put a barcode on it, they use the entire bottle and throw it away.
Yeah,
Then that's just what happens.
right. It does. You would hopefully train that person not to throw it away.
I mean, why would they keep it though? That's what I'm trying to think.
You would instruct them to keep it so you can track it after. So you can come back in and don't throw anything with a barcode label away. You would scan that at a later date, show that that material is empty, and hopefully the system worked right and you got along well with all your laboratory people and all that, which I don't know if that would happen. You would be able to track where it all went within the laboratory. They'd be able to either write it down, or if they had a scanning device, they'd know that when they took 5 of the gallons, it went into this drum, and when they took this many gallons or this many ounces, it went into here. And theoretically, that's what would happen. Depends, on the politics of the whole type of thing. As far as finding these barcodes companies, I had really never heard of them before much. I'm kind of familiar with the system that we use for drum tracking, but I guess they're located anywhere on the yellow pages. And the way they would set up the project is come down, sit with you, see what the scope of the project is, and design something for your facility. Anybody have any other questions on that? Yes.
You mentioned pesticides on your list of pesticides.
Uh-huh.
On your initial lecture about choosing a consultant, some consultants don't accept pesticides. Do you have any suggestion on that? Pesticides that have been banned?
In other words, for disposal?
Right.
You can the dioxin-forming compounds, things like that. Well, you should mention that. No, there are companies out there that will handle that material. Yeah. We are one of them, so if you want to talk to us after, more than happy to talk to you. We do a lot with pesticides. We've done a lot of amnesty programs for the states and things of that sort. But I guess the thing to do is just if they can't take something, just shop around a little bit, find out who can take it and what their requirements for taking it are, things of that sort. Yes?
I was wondering, just looking more and more like computer control system is going to go into mass balance kind of thing. These be a good system to think about it, if that ever comes to pass. Mass balance is where the law is eventually going to come to where you have to keep track of 1, 2, 3, for instance, purchases, and account for what is being used as opposed to what is sent out.
Yeah.
It looks to me like this is a way of the future.
Yeah, it really is. From what this gentleman told me and the capabilities of the system, it's unlimited as far as what you can do. I mean, food companies is where you see all barcoding now, and Frito-Lay. This gentleman told me about the president of Frito-Lay can sit in any board meeting anytime, access a computer. Every single one of his drivers has a handheld unit that they plug right back into their truck when they make a delivery at 7-Eleven in Amherst Center, and he can tell you exactly how many bags of Cool Ranch Doritos and this, that, and the other thing. So you can imagine for inventory control from a chemical standpoint, it can really help out, and you're going to know who's using what, who's generating what, what's coming in, what's not coming in, how much you've got in stock. When somebody calls and asks, biology calls and asks for acetone, and chemistry's got a surplus of it that they're sending out next week, it's all right there on the computer in front of one particular person. They say, well, there you go, there's your acetone right there. This is good stuff, and it's going out for disposal.
I think the biggest problem that most campuses are going to have, or having at the moment, is trying to control purchasing. Have developed a central purchasing unit for chemicals. Unfortunately, most big universities do not have anybody to call, any chemical vendor, whatever they want, and you don't even know when it is bad.
Exactly.
That poses a lot of problems. So until law or I guess something is required at the regulatory level, which I don't think we need, but then a system like that comes.
That, or when the upper management sees that biology is generating this much this month, and they could have put half their stuff with chemistry stuff that went out the next month, and then the physical plant the next month was sending out some of the same stuff. When they start, I go to a lot of colleges, a lot of universities, and talk to people about that same thing, and this is what they find after a while. And we try to tell them, have one centralized person to do all of your ordering, as well as the waste disposal as well. And some people start to do it, a couple of invoices come in, and they start to compare that they could have saved money by combining this with that, and that's usually what happens. I guess the main thrust of my topic today was, as I said at the beginning, that you don't have to be a Superman or Superwoman and do everything on your own. There are a lot of people out there, a lot of resources that can help you out through forums like this, sitting around chatting with other people. Someone might have some great ideas for a centralized purchasing area or agent for this gentleman here. Through your peers, we work in a very close and tight-knit industry. That's really where you find out a lot of information. And there's a lot out there that can help you better manage your time and be much more effective and get out of work at a decent hour every day, maybe. But does anybody have any other questions or ideas about time saving?
Just one comment, Paul, regarding the use of barcode systems. It's very prevalent in other industries, and excuse me, it's expanding across the board. I mean, just recently, all UPS staff members are now using barcode systems, and it's just a matter of time before it becomes prevalent in this industry. Its primary use in other industries, though, is for inventory and budgeting. As this gentleman mentioned, you can really gather a lot of data and information very quickly, and we consolidate programs and departments with this data and information. It's going to be the way in the future. I think most people will react to it sooner.
That's all right.
I know that J.P. Baker is probably a familiar name for those following the university. They do utilize the barcode system already. And if you look on a bottle of their chemicals, you see there is a barcode on there. And that's how they're able to track from the movement of manufacturer to the warehouse to the customer. I don't know if there's some way of combining, that barcode system with those programs.
In the, I guess, the grocery industry, or whatever you would call it, there are every single type of, canned peas has their own barcode number, and it's all distributed by one organization. So that if you own your own canned pea company, every single one, you would have your own barcode. So it could be incorporated into that. However, I think what the system I showed today was more of an individual one that your acetone, when some other college scan your thing, they're not going to know what this was. It's all specific to your site. But it might come to a point in time someday when it's just like the supermarket chains. And it's really, what he explained to me was fascinating within the supermarkets is, they have a total inventory at all times of everything that's in that store. And the second it gets logged out, through the scanners at the cash register, it comes off their inventory sheet. And then the general manager in the back of the store just types in, "Oh, we sold a lot of canned peas today. Let's order some more." Or if they don't even do that, sometimes at Stop and Shop or one of these big companies, it's all done corporately. Everything's done corporately. And then when you want the canned peas to go on sale, you type it in the computer 3 weeks before that they're going to go on sale August 6th. And then anytime it's rung through the register, they're on sale. It's fascinating stuff.
It sounds lovely for inventory. The trouble is, it's converting on the laboratory scale, converting from inventory to waste. You're not going to be able to use it to prove mass balance, because if you take 50 grams of sodium chloride and convert it into a saline solution for your biology lab, or something like that, there's not going to be a way to barcode that.
There's a few different ways I understand what you're saying.
You can, in theory, you
Right,
can,
yeah.
but in practice it just wouldn't happen.
Right.
And so what you're going to find, it's this business of it comes back, but as waste, a lot less comes back as waste than goes in.
Oh, yeah.
Canned pea, the supermarket can tell you how many cans of peas went out of the store. They can't tell you how many of those cans get recycled at the
Sure.
next recycling drive or something like that. So I think it's a much better tool for inventory purposes and finding out who's drinking the lab alcohol and so forth.
It would certainly open a lot of eyes when you showed it all coming in, and then going out, there was a third of what you took in actually went out. And barcode the drains, I guess, or something. Any other questions on any of the systems or any other ideas about time management? Thank you.
Before we hit the next speaker, Jim has an announcement he needs to make regarding the tour, so hold on a second. Our next presenter is Wendy Phippen. She's from the University of Washington, where she's the hazardous waste manager, and she's going to have a little speech on waste reduction audits and waste minimization. Wendy comes to us with a PS in chemistry, and she's now working on her master's in environmental engineering. And prior to University of Washington, she was at USC for 2 years as a safety specialist. So let's welcome Wendy.
Hello there. We're a little bit behind schedule, and unfortunately my talk's a little bit long, so bear with me. Okay, let me make sure this works. Yeah. Okay. Good afternoon. The waste minimization is a big thing these days, so it seems. And the reason being is because we are federally required to do so, to have waste minimization programs within our universities and colleges. Audits are proving to be an increasingly effective, practical management tool for determining waste minimization opportunities. Unlike environmental audits, waste minimization audits concentrate not only on environmental compliance, but on how waste is generated. At this time, audits are not required by the federal policies and regulations, but in addition, state regulations, most state regulations do not require it either, except for our state, Washington, and a few others. Waste minimization audits should be viewed as a risk control program. The object of control is to limit liability. Audits offer not only the opportunity to flag and correct current regulatory problems, but they will also target areas for proactive waste management as well. Waste minimization audits are one approach to providing information that will assist you in hazardous waste minimization. The audits will also establish a baseline with which to compare waste minimization progress in the future. After the auditing and evaluation phases have been completed, a comprehensive program can be developed that can be tailor-made to your university or college. This program should incorporate university goals, a reward system, a resource center, training materials, and some kind of procurement policies. Educational and research institutions contrast with that of most industrial generators. Most campuses use hundreds of thousands of chemicals in quantities between 1 gram and 55 gallons. It is not necessary in these audits that we designed to identify each waste generating process or experiment to complete. It is more important to identify categories and general origins of waste streams. Chemical waste sources. We, as you probably all experience, that chemistry, biology, and biochemistry and medical laboratories, both teaching and research, seem to be one of the largest generators that we have at the university. And we have found that research laboratories generate at least 2 times the amount that academic laboratories generate. Biology seems to be our second highest generator, and that indeed, again, research does outweigh the volume of the academic laboratories. It seems that chemicals used in biology are also less varied than chemistry, and generation is typically a 1 gallon or less quantities. Physics, geology, and psychology and engineering laboratories seem to be the runner-up to these 2. Arts programs, plant and maintenance operations, photography and printing operations, as well as agricultural programs. Waste minimization includes 3 types of activities that reduce the volume or toxicity of any hazardous waste: source reduction, recycling, and treatment. Source reduction is the single most preferable waste minimization approach. It can be viewed as any activity that reduces or eliminates the generation of a hazardous waste within a process. Elements of source reduction are as follows. Chemical substitution. Successful chemical substitution is an important aspect in any waste minimization program. Ideally, either a non-hazardous or less hazardous material is substituted in place of a hazardous material. Also, a recyclable material may be substituted for a non-recyclable material. Product substitution is enticing because liability risks and disposal costs may be eliminated entirely. Operational and process changes. The human aspects relating to hazardous waste generation can be extremely important in waste reduction. Good operating practices includes improved employee training, management initiatives, inventory control, and requiring increased use of preventative maintenance in efforts to reduce the number of leaks and spills. Segregating waste is another example of good operating practices. It's getting dark in here. No, that's all right. Recycling, which includes both reuse and reclamation, can be viewed as an activity that reduces hazardous waste, volumes, and toxicity with the recovery of a valuable material from the waste or regeneration of a spent waste that is subsequently utilized. Treatment is reduction or elimination of the toxicity of a hazardous waste by altering the toxic constituents of the hazardous waste to a less toxic or non-toxic form, or lowering the concentration of toxic constituents in the waste by means other than dilution, and also point of generation treatment and detoxification. Individual waste streams that are generated should be evaluated for possible treatment alternatives on site. Selection of the type of treatment will depend on several factors, including state and federal permitting requirements, rate of generation of the waste stream, and also the complexity of the treatment system itself. The permitting requirements alone may be enough to greatly limit the treatment opportunities that are available. If an audit study is to provide you with the right information that will assist you in hazardous waste minimization, it must begin with a good planning and organization. The following steps should occur during the planning and organization of an audit study. Get, manage, committed, and not to an insane asylum. But you need to get their backing. You need the policy statements that they can write and back. Set overall assessment program goals. Develop an audit form, checklist, and resource documents. Organize assessment teams. Under the current regulatory strain, getting management involved in developing university policy seems to get easier and easier. The policy does not have to be an elaborate network of specific minimization techniques. It must only state the university's goals. The statement can simply read, your school is committed to an institution-wide program that will reduce hazardous waste generation and to minimize the disposal of generated waste, thereby reducing potential impacts to human health and the environment. The key elements involved in waste minimization audits is establishing goals and objectives. The focus of a particular audit should be clarified in advance to a site visit. The primary goal of a waste minimization audit should be to assess potential methods to reduce or eliminate hazardous waste that are generated. A second goal of the assessment process is to identify specific information and training requirements for individual generators that would improve waste management practices within specific areas. Goals and objectives might include waste minimization, information transfer, employee awareness and training, operating practice review, records review, environmental permit compliance, meet quantitative reduction levels, and management accountability. The team's goals should be in agreement with the university's goals and policies. Be sure to record your audit team's goals. After the goals have been established, begin preparing an audit questionnaire. Checklists and support material additionally. These forms should include all the information you will need to achieve your established goals, but you must try to keep it user-friendly. These audit forms can get out of control very quickly if you want to add every single piece of detail that you're going to need for the program. I developed an audit questionnaire for each area of the university: research and academic labs, shops, miscellaneous areas such as the art department and print shops. Let's go through those audit forms real quickly. Basically, what I wanted to, in the first part, is to ensure that I knew who was putting writing down the information from the satellite generator, as well as who reviewed the information and came up with the options that we'll talk about later. Also, they start out with, does this laboratory have any knowledge of hazardous waste management? Do they have any kind of program that's established? If they do, that's great, but more times than not, they don't. Then it goes on to purchasing. Procurement policies are very loose in most universities, so we try to address that, asking questions about procurement policies. Then we ask some information that we not always get the truth on, and that is where this waste is going. I'd like to know information on if it's going down the drain and how much and what type, if it's going in the trash and the hoods. Like I say, you don't always get honest answers, but you'd be surprised if you get a technician in the laboratory how willing they are to talk. Also, even though we have very little space, we just want to focus on our primary hazardous waste streams. So what we asked is anything over 1 kilogram a month. There's still a lot of materials that are going to be listed on here, but we wanted to get the major ones. And also under 4 kilograms a month. And like I say, under the 4 kilograms per month, we're looking for acutely hazardous or extremely hazardous wastes there. On the third page, it's getting long. I'd like some information about chemical substitution and the possibilities here. Also, how are they feeling about reuse as far as the redistribution program? And spill procedures. That seems to be a big problem in the academic laboratories especially, is a lot of their waste is generated from just plain and simple spills. Then we have an audit review section. This is where the reviewer goes through and evaluates this laboratory, or as we'll see later, different areas, and where the potentials are. In the fourth page, we have options. The options that come under certain areas of waste minimization, reclaim and reuse, chemical redistribution, and so on and so forth. And then we also have a space for other options because each laboratory is unique and the opportunities in each laboratory could vary greatly. The next one is physical plan. I'll talk about this later, but anyway, again, I go over the same information, but from a different aspect. I make it as simple as possible. Either the shop has or does not have information about waste management. We go into specific things that we see problems with in physical plant. I'll talk about that in just a minute. Paint, pesticides, oil. And then also in the second page, we have a few more questions and then the audit review as well as the waste minimization options. This one's for miscellaneous operations, and we're basically looking at art departments, like I said before, art departments and print shops. And we're going over the same information, finding out if they have any basis for a management program and so on and so forth. And then also the overview as well as the options that were generated. The options that, as I go through this, you'll find that there are certain options that are very feasible. And what we're doing is we're going to try and use this last page, or at least portions of this last page, to send back to the satellite generator for their information as well as hopefully implementation of the option. One thing I'd like to also talk about is selecting the audit team. The audit team that will assist you in preparing and performing the audits is going to be crucial. I realize that we all have a certain amount of staff and that's it, but it's important that you get a diversity if you can. Getting departments involved is very important. Especially I found out in physical plant, what's this thing do? It's important that someone there represents them, if not, for the duration of the department's audit, at least for that area, that specific area in which that person's employed. It's very important. The assessment involves a number of steps, and that is to collect actively facility data. This is where you're going to find what target areas you're going to look for. Select and prioritize assessment targets, review data, and inspect labs, shops, and miscellaneous waste-generating facilities, generate waste minimization options, screen and select options for further study. Selecting target areas. The size of the university depends on how much effort you're going to put into the waste reduction audit. The task of identifying waste and the processes generating them is starting to look into the institution's records. You should begin auditing in the areas where the largest portion of your chemical waste stream is generated. Ideally, such considerations as quantity of waste, hazardous properties, regulations, safety of employees, economics should be considered when selecting the area of your university to begin auditing. However, with limited resources, large volume generators should be the first targets. With the assessment team in place and with specific target areas selected, the assessment continues with a visit to the site. Here's some guidelines that I found out as you do site inspections. That is, prepare an agenda in advance that covers all points that still require clarification. Notify physical plant or the lab manager and the appropriate personnel. This is very important. Some of these PIs really feel that this is their bedroom, and when you walk in, you're violating their bedroom. So it's important that you get a hold of them beforehand, and they'll feel more. I think they'll feel more comfortable with you being there. Schedule the inspection to coincide with a particular operation that is of interest. Observe the housekeeping aspects of the operation. Identify type, contents, quantities, and rates of generation. Include like I have on the other audits, what might be admitted to the air as well as to the water. This might be useful for later evaluation. Walk through the area, collect the data, and make notes on significant waste processing equipment and procedures. Record your observations as you see them. The objective of generating options is to generate a comprehensive set of waste minimization options for further consideration. List the possible options for waste reduction using the resources available to you. I found the resources such as trade journals, government agencies, private consultants, and other universities is valuable. List your options in the following order. Reducing waste at the source. That's the most important. Those seem to be the best minimization options. Recycling the waste generated, and also treating and processing to reduce the volume or toxicity. Environmentally, the higher on the list, the more desirable the option. A minimization option that is apparent in all areas audited was the need for centralized spent solvent reclamation. The selection of a specific solvent stream and distillation units will depend on the quantity and quality of the solvent you need generated. And the funds available within your department is also very crucial. centralizing the solvent recovery program versus encouraging individual departments to recover their solvents was more feasible for the University of Washington for the following reasons. One, the university had already developed a redistribution program for the solvent to be redistributed to the different departments. And also that solvent recovery could be generated for funds for the department. The University of Washington opted to purchase 2 spinning band distillation units for laboratory solvent recovery and 1 portable solvent still to cover shop solvents. The spinning band units, one seen here, not all the way together, they're working now, but the shop solvent still distills a large volume of moderately pure solvents. If any solvent recovery program is to be successful, it needs to provide assurable and predictable solvent quality to the users. What we had to do is put together a laboratory contract so that we have periodic GC evaluation of our solvents to assure the users that indeed it is as pure as we say it is. This is a laboratory in dire need of redistribution. This was an amazing slide to me when I saw it, but I thought I had to use it. Another waste minimization option that was apparent in all the areas audited was the need for the chemical redistribution program. There are several ways that a redistribution program can be established. The unused chemicals can be consolidated at a center location for later distribution, or the chemicals can be moved directly to the purchaser to a new consumer, from the purchaser to the new consumer. In either case, a list would be accessible to the interested staff through an established resource center. The final minimization option that was apparent in all areas audited was the need for procurement procedures. Procurement procedures can help control waste generation. Waste reduction purchasing policies should include to buy non-toxic or least toxic material for the job, use compatible products, for instance, standardize your solvents used in shops. This will enhance the recyclability and lessen the possibility of contamination. Buy only what is needed. Over-purchasing ties up capital, as well as promoting losses through spills and having to dispose of unused, old, out-of-date chemicals. Try to purchase materials in quantities sized to the amount that the purchaser will use. Stagger deliveries. Promote sharing of chemicals between users. Arrange with instructors and investigators to purchase part of their request if the quantities seem excessive, and arrange for partial shipment with the remainder shipped on an as-needed basis. Encourage responsible participation by chemical suppliers who can provide quick delivery for small orders and who will accept unopened stock returned to them. Notifying users of chemicals with limited shelf life. Such chemicals should only be ordered as needed to avoid outdated inventory. There are several ways to control procurement of hazardous chemicals, such as centralized purchasing, which is a little far out of base for us, or pre-purchase review, which seems to look like we're thinking that this might work. At least it has thus far in small areas that we've tried. Centralized purchasing routes, all purchasing through one person or one department. This makes it easier for uniform application of the policies developed. Additionally, centralized purchasing could be instrumental in locating potential consumers for a variety of your chemicals that are in your redistribution program. A more cost-effective method is pre-purchase review. This involves an individual in each department that is responsible for reviewing all department orders of the hazardous chemicals. As for specific minimization options that were determined in the academic laboratories, where waste is ordinarily generated in quantities of 1 gallon or more, typical wastes are inorganic acids and bases, organic solvents, metals, and a large number of dry powder and reaction products from experiments. Laboratory wastes are usually in the form of mixtures, contaminated solutions, and substances, and unused reagent chemicals. There's several ways to minimize the amount of waste that comes from these laboratories. Scale down the volumes of the chemicals used in the laboratory experiments. Using smaller volumes of chemicals in teaching laboratories will reduce the waste generated. Using such small volumes has several advantages. Reduction in chemical usage and waste generated, decreased hazard of fire and explosion, reduced concentration of harmful and organic vapors in the laboratory air, and students learn to work more carefully because of the small sizes. The problem with microscale experimentation is that certain reactions overheat and run out of control with small quantities, and certain experiments require at least 50 mils, for example, the Grignard reaction. Increased use of instrumentation. This doesn't seem to always be the economical means, but it does decrease the amount of, with proper use, it does decrease the amount of waste that's generated. We do have several laboratories that run HPLCs 24 hours a day, and that, I would say that's a small quantity of waste generated. Anyway, identifying common users of a particular chemical. This will increase the sharing of chemicals between departments and instructors. Treat and destroy hazardous waste products as a last step in experiments. This may not require a permit in this step if the step is part of the educational process or experiment. Distill waste solvents as part of curriculum, even from the other classes. This seems to be an interesting option. We've looked into this and are currently trying to determine if we can get another class as waste into the organic lab for distillation, but this seems to be something that their ears are perking up to. Keep individual waste streams segregated. This is very important. And not only will making sure that the non-hazardous waste and the hazardous waste is separated, but also the recyclable, non-recyclable. There are times that we have recyclable materials such as xylene come in with a trace of ethyl ether, which we will not distill. And unfortunately, that's something that could have been avoided by proper segregation. Develop a running inventory of the reagents in each laboratory to minimize reagent accumulation and maximize recycling, and ensure that all unused chemicals and waste are properly labeled. Substitute chemicals with less hazardous chemicals, for example, using biodegradable detergents in lieu of chromic acid and aqua regia solutions for cleaning glassware. Good experimental technique is very important also. For example, if solvents are required for cleaning, reuse the spent solvent for the initial cleanings and then have virgin solvent for your final cleaning. It actually cuts down, believe it or not, on waste by quite a bit for cleaning, and acetone is the typical solvent that we seem to be reducing in that instance. Pre-weighing chemicals for undergraduate use. This doesn't go over all that well, but there are some experiments in which the departments will pre-weigh. Part of getting your chemical education is to weigh chemicals, so that is important, but we do have a lot of waste, like I say, due to spills from undergraduate laboratories. Research laboratories. They are very, very much less flexible and also very highly focused, which limits the substitution, process change, and volume reduction options greatly. Wastes are generally generated in quantities of more than 1 gallon, and typical wastes are inorganic acids and bases, organic solvents, and a large number of dry powders. Several ways that we found that seem to work is that increasing the use of instrumentation. Labs do have definitely a budget that they have to go under, but I have noticed that when simple things, instead of bench method analysis, if they just use a spec 20 or the neighbor's AA, it seems to reduce the waste quite a bit. Treating or destroying hazardous waste is the final and last step in experiments. Keep individual waste streams segregated. Strict checkout procedures implemented by the individual departments. This is so important. We have people leaving all the time and they just leave all this stuff in their laboratory and there's no procedures that these departments have for these professors to check out. One way of getting the chemistry department, biology department to commit to a policy for these professors is letting them know how much this is costing them, especially the unknowns. We get a tremendous amount of unknowns from these laboratories, and just to let them know how much it's going to cost them to have it HAZCAT and disposed of is enough to get them to implement a policy for their department. Also, develop a running inventory of the reagents in each laboratory to minimize the reagent accumulation and maximize the recycling and to ensure unused chemicals and waste are properly labeled. Substitute chemicals with less hazardous subchemicals. The same example would be to use a detergent instead of a corrosive glass cleaner. The shops were a whole different realm of discovery. To actually audit the shops was an eye-opening experience. I found that it was especially helpful to have an individual familiar with the shop assist the audit team during the audit. Although the shops were a bear to audit, and I mean they were a bear, and I've only done like 1%, they were the most willing to implement minimization options. 3 major operations were deemed responsible for most of the waste generated in physical plant: parts cleaning, equipment cleaning, painting, and pest control. During parts cleaning, solvents are used in a variety of operations. For instance, cleaning off grease, oils, soil, and so forth from metal and plastic parts. The solvents that we found that were used were petroleum distillates, oxygenated solvents such as esters, ketones, and alcohols. In addition, halogenated solvents. These solvents were used in either a wipe cleaning or soap tank situation. Solvents can be eliminated in both instances in order to incorporate a biodegradable aqueous cleaning agent. Caustic cleaners and surfactant cleaners are available. Caustic cleaners may need to be neutralized, and the hazard to the employees must be closely evaluated. To use the aqueous cleaners, the use of aqueous cleaners can result in cost savings. The cleaning efficiency seems to be higher than in solvents, and that is the number of parts that can be cleaned per gallon of cleaner. Distillation of starter solvents can be achieved with a shop solvent distillation unit, like we decided to purchase. We decided to do that, like I say, at a centralized location because it was more convenient for us, but that may not be convenient for most shops at other universities and colleges. Contamination of solvents had to be limited due to the actual problems that we incurred during distillation. And such methods as removing the sludges promptly and frequently, and installing a lid on the tank, and also a great big sign on the tank on what goes in there, that makes a big difference. A lot of people don't know in the shops that XYZ can't be mixed with anything else, and that it would actually have to go out as a hazardous waste versus being recycled and reused again. Painting processes include surface treatment, paint stripping, dip coating, and so forth seem to be a problem additionally. Paint application operations generate waste comprised of latex and oil-based paint sludge and aqueous and solvent cleaning solutions. The waste stream can be minimized by segregating the oil-based sludges and the latex sludges, as well as the solvent sludges, mixtures, cleaning agents, and the aqueous cleaning agents. Also, using the proper equipment, the proper procedures made a big difference, as well as just plain and simply eliminating oil base. That was a problem because a lot of our classrooms and stuff are painted with oil base, and of course latex can't go over the top without a lot of sanding and a lot of labor work. But I think if they're willing to take a look at the difference in cost for disposal, that they'll be willing to change over and implement procedures for using all latex. Pesticides is not the largest waste stream generated, but definitely the most difficult to dispose of. The most inviting waste minimization option was to use biodegradable, natural pesticides, but of course our ground shops wouldn't even hear of it. Other ways to minimize the waste streams would be investigate the use of irrigation injection of pesticides through a sprinkler system, or using a dry pesticide and watering it into the ground. The pesticide also, when you clean the pesticide applicators, they have a tendency to put this all in a 55-gallon drum and send it our way. Another way is to reuse the rinse water as part of their makeup water for the pesticide. In every shop, sloppy operating procedures were very common. Implementing better operating procedures would be a giant start in minimizing the amount of chemical waste generated by the shops. Miscellaneous areas. The art department and printing shop seem to be the largest waste generators in this category. The printing operations were done by either letterpress, lithography, or screen. Additionally, your university may have binding, bookbinding, typesetting, and engraving, and so forth, like ours did. And that seemed to be a generator of solvents and inks. Our waste minimization options here were to establish better operating procedures for the areas. Several of them were sloppy as far as cleaning plates and so forth. It was just, instead of wiping things down, it was more of a let's dunk it and rinse it and throw it all away. And so with better operating procedures, the waste should be minimized. Also, chemical substitution with less toxic or recyclable solvents. And also reclamation. One of the major things that our art department generated was the wastewater stream with PhotoFixer. And the PhotoFixer, which is used to develop pictures, was contaminated with silver, and thus that was the only reason why it couldn't go down the drain, why it wasn't sewerable. So what we did is put together a reclamation system that would reclaim the silver, and thus what ends up to be something worth we reclaim about $300 worth of silver every 6 months. It doesn't seem like a lot, but we only got half the profits each time that we turn in one of these cylinders. But it's worked really well. It's and also after, of course, the treatment, it's sewerable. Okay, now we're getting to feasibility. We can think about just about any option in the world, and as in Washington State, they say generate all the options you can think of. Well, there's some fanatical ones I'm sure we can come up with, but we need to find out if they're feasible or not. The best options then can be selected for implementation. This after going through the feasibility study. Some of the criteria that were used were environmental evaluation, technical evaluation, and economical evaluation. Only 2 of these were required by our Washington State regulations. The environmental evaluation determines whether the option will generate an end product that would be more or just as harmful to the environment as the initial waste generated. For example, when substituting an aqueous cleaner for a solvent cleaner, a non-phosphate bearing cleaner would be preferable over the cleaner containing phosphates. Some typical environmental criteria can be used as follows. Does the option create an environmental problem? Does the option minimize the present and future threats to public health? Does the option minimize environmental liability for the university or college? The technical evaluation determines whether the proposed waste minimization option will work in a specific application. For equipment-related options, visits visit seeing the installation of this equipment as well as the use of this equipment could be very important and useful. All options should be reviewed for by the affected groups involved to ensure that these options are viable. Some typical technical criteria that can be used is the operation safe for university employees and students? Has the option been tested in other universities and colleges? Is any additional maintenance or employees required to operate this equipment or procedures? The economic evaluation can be a little more complicated. In making the economic evaluation, it is convenient to compare the option cost to the existing system. This represents the difference between the estimated cost associated with the waste minimization option and the actual cost of the existing system without waste minimization options. Each university or college has its own economic criteria for selecting options for implementation. In performing an economic evaluation, various cost elements of the waste minimization option can be broken down into capital costs and operating costs. Capital costs such as disposal fee and taxes, transportation costs, pre-disposal treatment method costs, reagent chemical costs, pollution liability insurance, and training costs. I suggest that saving in these costs should be taken seriously because they can add up. In addition to capital cost components that can be quantified, there are several that cannot be quantified, and that is public relations and protection of employee health. With increasing level of environmental regulation,